Our next session, Growing Pains From Self to Selfless, features some of our industry's most thoughtful leaders. Please welcome Marcelo De Santis, Director, Digital Transformation for ThoughtWorks, Enrique Ortegon, SVP, SMB North America for Salesforce, Christina Dacauaziliqua, Executive Director, Morgan Stanley, Karina Montilla Edmonds, Ph.D., SVP, Global Head of Academies and University Alliances for SAP, and Monica Caldas, EVP and CIO, Global Retail Markets for Liberty Mutual.
Good day, everyone, and welcome again to the Fall 2021 High Tech Leadership Summit, sponsored by Google. I hope you're having a great time, enjoying the different activities, and also taking the opportunity to connect with the rest of the high tech familia. My name is Marcelo De Santis, and I have the pleasure and the privilege to moderate this panel called Growing Pains from Self to Selfless. During this conversation, we will switch our focus from digital growth to personal growth by taking a very candid look into the personal growth journeys of Christina, Enrique, Karina, and Monica. They will talk about those moments of success and adversity that test their resilience and made them the amazing leaders they are today. Christina, Enrique, Karina, and Monica, welcome and thanks for being with us today. So without further ado, let's start the conversation with the first question to the panel. We all went through our personal growth journeys, and while each journey is a different one, they usually present as a common denominator moments of success and adversity, and situations that test our resilience and ability to learn and adapt. Please, tell us about your personal growth journeys now, and specifically about those growing pains that have defined who you are today. So let's start with Christina, please.
Hello, and thank you. Thank you, Marcelo. So I want to start really from the beginning of the person that taught me abundance rather than scarcity. I remember early days when we were fleeing from a situation of violence and being in so much poverty. And my mother heard of this person, this woman with 3 kids. You know, there are only me, but this other individual had 3 children. And she said, honey, we need to go there and take some food for them, right? And I remember thinking about it, like, wow, we don't have a lot, but okay. So that's what we do. We build community. I get it, right? Or not quite. I didn't get it. Of course, you reflect that much later in life. But I think that I so appreciate that gift of abundance, even in situations where you may think, but I don't have a lot to offer. You have so much when you're to offer when you go there within your community. So I think that is it. Just pretty much when I look at my trajectory from a personal perspective, and then into my career in finance, poverty, and then in finance. It was really a level of resilience and hunger to make things better within communities, and ensuring that not only I was successful, but also what are ways by which I could actually make things better because I existed. And that responsibility being there at the very early stages. Even when I just moved into this country, not knowing the language and trying to figure it out, how to fill out forms for and pursue education, because I knew that was something that it would take us, create social mobility for us in some way. And it truly did. And Marcelo, if I tell you, I mean, today it's a very special day. My mother just turned 80. And as soon as we're done here, I'm hopping into a cab and taking her to Italy. She loves to draw, and she's visiting from Brazil. And again, a woman that had a very hard life, and today I have the opportunity of creating abundance with this extraordinary human that is 80.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you. Super inspiring story. Thank you very much. Uh, let's give the chance now to Enrique to share his story.
It's amazing, Christina. Thank you so much. Happy birthday to your mom. And Marcelo, thank you so much for allowing us to be here. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be in such company. So I'll be very brief. A little bit of my history. There's been plenty of twists and turns, but I'm going to latch on one anecdote earlier in my career that is funny. 20 years later, or I guess 19 years later, it's come back to give me an unexpected gift that I'm trying to give back a little bit to the Hispanic community. So I was born and raised in Merida, Mexico, right, in the Yucatan Peninsula. I was educated most of my, up the way to college in Mexico. And in 2000, in the early 2000s, 2001, I had the opportunity to go work for a consulting company in Boston, Massachusetts. Most of my career is being through management consulting. And I remember early on, I was having a conversation with my manager at a cafeteria at a customer site. And he looked at me across the table and he said, I don't know if you're going to make it. And it's like, that's the last thing you want to hear when you're, in some place in the middle of New Jersey, trying to make it in this new job, far away from your family. And he looked at me and said, yeah, you have a language barrier. And we just don't know if you're going to make it. And, that really shook me. I do not have a formal English education, right? I learned, I never took classes. I just learned by listening to other people. And, the TV was my number one teacher. And for the next 18 years or so, I worked really hard to conform to the American culture. And that included adapting my language, or trying to hide my accent, my habits, my culture, right, and try to conform as much as I could to the American work environment. And it was not until 17 or 8, sorry, 17, 18 years later, like 2-3 years ago, I looked around and I realized that everybody in the room had an accent, right? I realized that people from different parts of this country have an accent. I realized that different, people from different countries that where English is their first language have an accent, right? I realized that, there's this gift of many cultures and many habits. And I said, why am I trying to hide who I am? And having an accent doesn't necessarily mean you're not understood, right? Just like having different habits and different culture doesn't mean, means you're different, but doesn't mean you cannot not add value, right? And bring, not only the diversity, but the inclusion. So over the past 2-3 years, I actually made it a point to embrace my accent, to embrace my Mexicanness. Today, I am not in my office. I think we had this the pre-meeting, the prep. So my office. You walk into my house, although it's in the middle of San Francisco, it feels like you walk into Mexico. And I think this conversation, talking about going from self to selfless, it's about how do we make sure we're. I mean, I think Eric, the comedian, said, how do we pull? How do we push? Pull up, push up. It's about that. It's about making sure I am, and I'll show some vulnerability here. Sometimes I am a bit uncertain, and I am a bit uncomfortable. Sometimes pushing my selfness and my whole self into work environments. But I think we have to do it because that's the only way we can pave the way and open the trail for the people who are, next after us. So that's it. That's a little bit of my history and a little bit of my journey, from, again, 20 years or so ago and where I am now, and how I'm trying to go from self to selfless by putting ourselves out there and giving this space, trying to create this space for other people that look like us, that speak like us, that behave like us, to make them feel that they belong and they're valued and they're safe, in this current environment. So That's it. Marcelo, back to you.
Thank you, Enrique. Amazing story, and thanks for being so open. As you share your story with all of us. So, Monica, what's your story, Monica?
Yes, maybe a similar pattern here of immigration and coming to a new place. I came to this country when I was 8, and in my house, we were very proud about our heritage, and so it was Portuguese food and Spanish television, and it was very proud. And my parents used to say to me, "Be proud of who you are." And so I grew up with that mindset at an early age, and I have always lived with that sort of courage. But I agree with you, Enrique. It takes time to get that right. And for me, watching my parents pursue the American dream, all the obstacles they faced by not fitting into the mold that others around them had, they always said you have to just keep going. And so I learned this grit and this philosophy that there's no problem that's too big to solve. And so that was my upbringing. And my career, after college, I started at General Electric, and I got a chance to apply my courage and grit mindset and develop my leadership style there. And today I'm very lucky. I'm part of Liberty Mutual, which is a wonderful company. But when I was at GE, I maybe tell a story from early in my career where I got to maybe test whether I really had this grit or not, and maybe even develop a little bit more. I started in a role and eventually got promoted and had a team. And it was early on in my career, and I'm a petite woman, a lot of energy packed into a small frame. But I remember I took over a team of seasoned technologists, and I'm a woman in tech, and there's not many of us. At that moment, I was the only one in that room and in that team. And in my first meeting, they quickly called out and said, "You know what? You're too young and you don't know anything. So how are you going to lead us?" And it did make me feel like I was 2 inches tall. But I was reminded, of the experience with my parents and just having gone through that as a child. And I stood straight in my chair and kind of let them talk. But I walked away with saying, I am going to figure it out. I am not going to give up. And I spent a lot of time leaning into mentors and getting help. I reached out for help. I said, I don't know how to resolve this. What do I do? And a lot of advice on listening to each of them, winning them over with my hard work, my curiosity, my passion for winning. And that was a crucial lesson, that you have to lead with humility, be authentic, and be a continuous learner. And that has stayed with me. And so in every job, in whether you're personal or professional, I'm always leaning into that grit, but also always being myself. And, from a work setting, I still carry this today, where there's nobody that knows all the answers. And you shouldn't walk in pretending that you do either, but then learn from each other and find that in different experiences and different cultures, in that richness of diversity is where wisdom comes from. And so I lean into that and lead every day with that. And it all started from, watching my parents and their journey and their story.
Thank you, Monica. Looks like, across all the stories, our parents have played a very instrumental role, in shaping our future and who we are today. Thank you for sharing, Monica. Karina, what's your story?
Absolutely. And I'm going to pick up on that because like Monica, I immigrated to the United States when I was 7.5. And we went to Rhode Island, and absolutely my parents have shaped, and it's the reason why I'm so grateful. I immigrated from a small island, the Dominican Republic, and I'm just so very grateful for everything that we have here in this country and the opportunities. So I learned not to squander opportunities. I really have taken every opportunity provided to me. And so, by the way, I want to, with Enrique, with the accent early on, I even remember when I came to the US that, there was a time where people with accents were seen as like less intelligent, And so I'm glad that you're embracing your accent and moving to that direction. But just like Enrique, when I started my career, you really tend to assimilate, and I'll tell you a story in a minute. But some of the things that really changed me. So my parents, when we immigrated, super hard workers, like I'm sure all our parents are. But you know, and my parents came to the U.S. to give us an education. So I'm the youngest of 6 girls, and I had the most opportunity. And after my first year in college, it was sort of a wake-up moment for me because I was making more at my internship than both of my parents combined doing hard labor. Like the heaviest thing I picked up at my job was a pencil. And they're doing hard labor. They were mold injection machiners. And they worked for Hasbro, which was a terrible job, but it was a job. And shortly after that, those jobs actually went to China. So I saw them be left actually even without a job, which was hard. So, but after my first semester in college, or my first year, like I said, I realized the value of education, you know, and I was fortunate because early on, some teachers recognized I had a special aptitude in math, and they nominated me for a program where I met a lot of engineers. I didn't even know what an engineer was, but every engineer that I met was doing something really cool and seemed to have a living wage, which is important to me. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to live paycheck to paycheck, and that I had a family that I would need to help. And so I went on to engineering. Well, I decided I wanted to be an engineer, which sounds okay. What's the problem? In high school, when I told my high school counselor that I wanted to do engineering, he said, you should consider a different career path. Wow. And older white gentleman, I always give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to say it was because I was a woman or a person of color or I had a heavy accent. I'm going to say he was probably not comfortable with math either. And this happens sometime where people, will discourage you for something that they feel is hard. Anyway, I really want to thank him because that just made me want to do this so much more. And so I went into University of Rhode Island, where I now serve on the board of trustees. And I was like, if I'm going to try as hard as I can, and even if I fail, I will try that much harder. And really with that attitude, put me on a great path to get my Ph.D. at Caltech in aeronautics. And so things, so for me, education, adversity, and just being super grateful for everything that we have. And I think we had the baseball player yesterday or 2 days ago, Alex, who talked about, he goes back to the Dominican Republic and people have so little. So I really think that background that I have of knowing how people survive with so little and being here. And so now there's, like Monica mentioned, like there's no problem we can't solve, there's no adversity that we can't overcome. And really, I feel adversity builds character. And so that's really sort of my experience for this.
Thank you, Karina. I'm so glad you got into engineering. We need more female technology engineers in the world, as technology is taking over every single thing that we do. So congratulations for
thank you. And that continues to be my passion. Absolutely. Getting more women, underrepresented students into the field is what I do all the time.
Excellent. Well, thanks for all your stories. I'm sure the audience is extremely inspired at the moment. So let me ask a different question now. I mean, it's clear that, as you grew yourself personally and professionally, you had very different experiences. But what are you most proud of in regards to your impact on those around you? Your family, your working colleagues, your community. What are you most proud of? Let's start this time with Monica.
Yeah, I would say building winning teams, right? Helping people aim higher. When people call me and they say, hey, I achieved a milestone that I didn't think was possible, those personal stories, they really touch me. And it makes me so happy to know that I had an opportunity to contribute in some small way to that. So I would say that makes me very proud. But I would tell you one story that I am the most proud of. And Karina, you will probably enjoy this because it's right around women in STEM. Is the work that I've done and continue to do to increase more women in tech, which we need to. And I started in early in my career just because I was lonely being in technology and not having other women around me. And I joined when I joined my previous company, I joined affinity groups right away, trying to find some level of camaraderie. And I was lucky. I did find that. But in 2015, I had the opportunity to become the executive sponsor of a Girls in STEM program across the globe. And it was just part of what I call my hobby, but it really was a program to inspire and motivate more girls into STEM roles. And it was incredible because we were targeting girls around the age of 10 to 12 to come do a summer program. And you know, some of them came and, like you said, Karina, like, what's this? And I'm not sure I'm good at it. And so we gave them a lot of hands-on learning activities, and they got to meet other females in STEM that were professionals, others that were in college. So we really try to make it a well-rounded experience. And then after they finished their summer program, they went on to continue to do other programs with us. So we actually follow them from middle through high school. And what's really so awesome about this, that I'm really proud, is that we eventually started to also offer scholarships, so we can complete the full circle of not just planting the seed of the art of the possible, but also continuing to water that potential and to feed and care it. And then when some of those girls decided, yeah, this is for me, I could do this, we had a scholarship to help enable and support that. And that was an incredible opportunity that we were able to do that. And today I still sponsor these types of programs at Liberty Mutual. So it's a passion project, Karina, that I share with you. And that's something that makes me really proud to do that.
That's great. That's great. Yes, thank you for doing that. We all need to do that. And I think I'll pick it up from there, Marcelo. So yeah, early on, actually during my time in college, I was part of, we started a program called Sci-Fi, Science is Fun, reaching out to 3rd and 4th graders. And there was a little girl who challenged me every week. So the first week she says, I want to be a hairstylist. And mind you, this is before the amazing colors we have for hair color these days, right? So I said, you don't want to be stuck with the colors they give you. You want to be a chemist. So you want to be a chemical engineer because you can create your own colors. The next week, I want to be a fashion designer. I was like, well, do you really just want to use the materials they have available to you? You can create amazing materials. And again, this is before we had these LED lights, costumes that you'd see. So, and by the way, the reason I went on to get my PhD was because I wanted to teach. I was very lonely. In undergrad, I was the only person of color, one of 2 females. In my graduate studies, 5 years at Caltech, 3 out of my 5 years, I was the only female in my class. And so, yes, it is very lonely. However, I decided teaching was not the route for me at that time. But what's amazing is that I continue to do this in my job every day. So I'm currently leading University Alliances at SAP. And what I do is, one, I serve as a role model every opportunity that I get. I had an awesome experience to serve in the Obama administration, 2010 to 2013, and I was part of the Women and Girls Speaker Bureau. So whenever I traveled around the country, I would find an all-girls school or always speak to SWEES, Chapter, Society of Women Engineers, National Society of Black Engineers, Hispanic, SHIP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. So that's really what drives me, and I'm very fortunate. I feel that I can align my passion, this personal passion, with my professional career of reaching out. This is what I do. I work with students, and most recently, I just make sure that students at historically Black colleges, Hispanic serving institutions have access to the amazing resources that we have at SAP, and that they have an opportunity to join the company and join all the amazing companies that are out there. So yeah, I know I probably went a little bit off, but
was perfect, Karina. Before we go to hear from Christina, just let me remind you that you can send your questions. You don't need to wait up until the end. If you send your questions through the chat function, we will take them maybe in the next 5 minutes. So it's important that we have a dialogue with all our colleagues. So go ahead and send your questions. We will be monitoring from here. So Christina.
Yes. So my goodness, it's so interesting, like how a lot of us are dedicated into a lot of things that are similar. So I'm going to pick something a little bit different because I'm sure we all do many, many things. So one moment that was interesting is I'm a founder of a circle at the company that grew. We were almost a decade old cohort. It has expanded to Tokyo, to Shanghai, and to Montreal, and we're everywhere, and it's wonderful. And basically, it's a group of folks that come together to knit and to crochet and to distribute things to various communities. And through that engagement, there was somebody in our circle that had this amazing work that she was doing in finance for this organization called Covenant House. Covenant House dedicates time to create dignity and a space of love and support for homeless youth, not only in the United States, but also in Canada and Central America. Mm-hmm. And that the first ask was interesting, talking about getting out of your comfort zone, because first thing that comes to my mind, I'm like, will these young women really, in a situation of crisis, right, will be interested? And actually it was a mother and child section of it. Would they be interested? But actually it was interesting because, anyway, I despite whatever I felt, I was like, I'm going to make the commitment because I think it's a worthwhile cause. It is outside of my comfort zone, but let's see how it goes. I'll make it a year commitment. I'll make it happen. And little did I know that once I got there and we start doing work, and sometimes there are situations of crisis. I mean, literally, this young woman is coming from a violent situation and being put into the hospital, into the shelter. But just sitting there with us and doing, just doing something else completely with our hands. I remember some of them talking about interviews and how they were frustrated because one in particular, very expressive Hispanic young woman. I think that they're just intimidated by me. And I mean, turning to her, kind of saying, hey, perhaps they're just thinking you're a handful. I don't want to deal with you. And her wheels turning. And because we are in this group and this community and this safe space, I was able to reach, right? And to have that conversation, and I see the wheels turning and her pausing, and I didn't think of that. And there were so many moments where sometimes we're doing design, career design, and a number of different things. And a girl holds my hand as we were leaving. And after doing this exercise, and she looks at me and she says, but Miss, I have so much trauma. And I look her into the eye and I said, Mijita, yo también. And if I made it, so will you. So those nuggets, those moments are so, like, if you put yourself out there to be with your people. Well, first of all, I really spook them because they don't expect me to speak Spanish. So it's always fun. As it is my third language, but it's just one of those things that you just to connect. So I would say for this audience of amazing leaders, go towards your discomfort. I feel that there is an element, and be with the people, right? Being with Girls Who Code, being with, which we had amazing stories with, these girls going to Dominican Republic and creating classrooms, and they were TAs with us, and we're supporting them, and they're doing this work here, and now we're hiring them. It's just incredible. Create personal connections. I would say amplify yourself through others. Take the time to do that. There is nothing better. I think my mentees, every now and then, they say something inspiring to me, honestly. I mean, this young generation is absolutely incredible, I must say. If you don't get a chance to talk to them, they are incredible. They will change the world. I know it. Particularly the chingonas. They are awesome. Just get to know them. Follow them on Instagram. I do. And I think those are the moments, being in Guatemala, doing service, and make yourself feel uncomfortable. Go towards our people and be there for them.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you for the authenticity as you share your stories and your learnings. Thank you very much for that. Enrique, your turn now.
Yeah, I'll be brief because these answers are so amazing. It's just I'll try to add on top of them, and I'll be brief so we can move to a different question. I think what makes me most more proud is when I see examples and evidence of being able to create opportunity for other people. Right? It's the ex-employee, the ex, or the friend who emails and says, "Hey, thank you for your recommendation for business school. I got in," right? Or "Thank you for helping me prepare for this interview. I got the job," right? And more importantly, when we get notes from people that says, "Hey, to Christina's point, I think as leaders, sometimes we're seen as these ever, even keeled, very powerful, tranquil people. And no, we're humans. We have anxieties, we have insecurities, we get stressed, right? We have crisis. And I think by us showing our vulnerability and our humanity, we're able to inspire people to take more risks. And when people take risks, they improve and they succeed. And seeing that on the teams that we lead, on the people that we lead, especially for the minorities, is incredibly rewarding for me. So that's also, I think, to me, is seeing the evidence of people being inspired and motivated, empowered to go on and do things that will otherwise feel uncomfortable doing, right? And especially when that comes from us being able to show them that humanity, it's common amongst us, and we're all humans and we're vulnerable, and we just have to show it, so then other people feel that psychological safety, so they can take risks and grow. So Marcelo, I'll pass it on to you because I think there are some other questions that are coming through. So
thank you, Enrique. And good segue. You were talking about being uncomfortable and how that becomes a burning platform for growing. There is a question about the pandemic, right? And the question is, you are all leaders in your organizations, and what did you learn about leadership through the pandemic? So
Empathy.
Go ahead.
I can start. Empathy, for sure. That really, and just what's important, right? And making sure that before work, like, we have to be okay. And checking in on everyone and making sure that people have the resources that they need to succeed, and that success may look different after the pandemic than before. But really, I think just being empathetic and recognizing, and I think that helps us as well, right? People are a lot more empathetic of where you're coming from, your background. And so, like I said, I want to give my fellow panelists a chance to, but I would say empathy, number one.
Thank you, Karina.
I think together we can do anything. It was incredible to see in a variety of different stages where we have the privilege to be the face of something that we're working on, being the work that we do, and our ability to adapt and pivot at all levels, right? Human resilience onto that within our organizations. And I mean, I was just putting together a slide now where we're showing some of the transitions that we made throughout the pandemic. And, if you had asked me at that time that, oh, you would be here, 32,000 people, and you've done this at a high quality, there are moments that I'll be like, oh, this is pretty amazing. So that is one aspect of the work. But then also as a community, I mean, we have an amazing employee group that we've been growing since, 2019, and with Women in Technology since 2015. And how the communities came together. And as Karina said, checking on each other, making sure people are okay, and doing what we need to do as humans, right? And really growing closer and stronger together. There is so much power in community. And I think that for me, that was the biggest lesson. And making sure that you're checking on people and making sure they're okay. And particularly your board of directors and the people that really provide their currency to you, right? But also those that are more junior that may not feel comfortable reaching out to you. And oh, by the way, you forget where you are in your journey often. So it's important to that 360 of just kind of so that you can get a full sense of how people are doing, and then how together we can amplify, elevate, and create more abundance for everyone. Don't get me wrong, it was hard. It was hard to be away from my family. As I said, my mother just being here. Being away from her, particularly at this age, it was really hard. And I and I have friends that were lost, and other individuals that lost families, and it was a really hard time. But like everything else in life, it was filled with pain, but also a lot of joy in so many ways too, as we come together to support each other.
Thank you, Christina. And any other thoughts from the panel?
I'll say one of these chip in. I think it taught us a lot about focused and prioritization. I think it made us realize that we were doing a lot of things. We're putting a lot of noise into the system. Forgetting and things that we're not, maybe forgetting, not paying enough attention to things that are very important. One of them is, for example, the issue of mental health, right? It's a conversation we've been having a lot recently, but it's not a new issue, right? But I think the pandemic resurfaced and reprioritized it. And I think it's very important that we continue to talk about it and continue to talk about, it all starts with each of us and each of the individuals, right? And if the individuals in the team are not doing well, they don't have, mental health, they don't have physical health, they're not rested, it's going to be very hard for the entire team to perform. And I think the pandemic made us refocus and reprioritize the importance of, wellness and well-being for each of the team members. And I hope as we try to go back to, or try to get out of this pandemic state, we continue that focused and prioritization.
Yeah, I would add onto it what Enrique said, is it's the concept of servant leadership. I think the pandemic enabled all of us to develop, if we didn't have that muscle, or to mature it, because it's about how do you connect everyone. We're all in this together. I have teams in China, I have teams in Brazil and Ecuador, et cetera, et cetera. And, while one group was getting to one stage of the cycle that things were improving locally, another group would be going backwards. And so how do you come together as a community, and how do each of the leaders serve in the capacity of empathy, which Karina talked about, in the capacity of community, which we're talking about. And so that concept of servant leadership, I think, became front and center.
Excellent. And that's a good segue, because we got a question about servant leadership. And the question is, servant leadership seems to have become a popular thing recently, to your comments, Monica. What are your thoughts on that? And I will add, what does it mean for you to be a servant leader?
Yeah, I actually think Monica sort of hit that nail right on the head in her answer, in that, that we are looking out, checking in on our teams, the importance of mental health, and making sure that we're all, I don't want to say at the same level, because we're not. Things are still changing. So, this is third wave now coming in Europe, and things I'm getting shut down. But and I think empathy drives that as well. So to be empathetic means, to me, it's almost like hand in hand, one goes with the other, that you by default are going to bring on this servant leadership style. So
I agree, Karina. I would say, maybe just to add another sentence to it, where traditional leaders are focused more on rank, right, and the position and power to tell people, here's what we need to do, here's how we're going to do it, and here are all the measurements. I would say the servant leadership leads and shares more of that power and control, right? has more engagement, that empathy that we're talking about, that listening, and sees the role and the position as a real opportunity to help others and to bring others along rather than to demand. I would say those are the differences. And all these organizations, we all had to develop some sense of that if we didn't already have it, because we were forced into a very real crisis. And so I think that's probably why we're hearing more and more about it, because we all got a chance to practice it if we weren't already. And so that would be some of the call outs I would add to what we just said.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you for your thoughts. There is another question I want to go through from the audience, and thanks for the engagement from all our people here. It's common in the Latinx community for folks to have impostor syndrome. Was that the case for you, and what suggestions do you have on how to conquer it?
Yeah, I have a great suggestion. So there is a recent HBR article that talks about for us to stop using that because actually it's a quite outdated model of thinking. It was created in a time where people did not understand the effects of misogyny, racism, and a number of other issues in society. So basically, they put the problem on the people that I was like, wait a minute, I feel uncomfortable here. Yeah, you do, because these structures are here to diminish you. Amazing article. If you Google it, oh, am I doing a little bit of a appeal for our sponsor? Anyway.
Why not?
What's the articles again?
Stop saying it's imposter syndrome. Again, it's from Harvard Business Review. Very recent, very well thought out. For me, it was very tough. It was thought-provoking because yes, I feel sometimes that I am too loud and I'm too Latina. And I need to calm down and bring it down. But wait a minute, but maybe I'm not meant to fit in. I'm meant to stand out and amplify our community. That's what I am meant to do. Great article. Check it out.
Yeah. So I don't want to diminish. I think this is great, and I'm going to follow that advice myself. But to maybe give a little more to the audience in terms of the other piece of that, of maybe feeling like you are not. Yeah, that you don't belong at the table. My thing is that we are ourselves harshest critic. And what I was going to say is like, this doesn't go away. And I'm not going to say the word because we're going to get it out of our lexicon. But I will say that there might be a place where you feel like, yeah, like you're not ready to be there. And there's this little voice in your head. And what you have to do is acknowledge it. And then don't listen to it. You move on and you do your job and you move forward. So, but I really like Christina's, and I'm going to read the article that we shouldn't use that. But regardless, there's time, that little voice in your head. Sorry, Enrique.
Yeah, that's great, Karina. I was going to build on top of it because I'm going to say two things. One, to the question, I'm pretty sure this is not exclusive to Latinx communities, right? I think everybody, in a way, like feels imposter syndrome. The answer, the question is, should you seek it? And I was funny. I was asked the same question just a couple of weeks ago, and my recommendation was you should seek to feel that. And let me say what I mean by that is because if you're doing that, it means you're pushing yourself, right? If you're pushing yourself, you're learning, right? We learn at our edges, right? And I think what we need to do is you can have imposter syndrome, but also have that self-compassion that we can do this job. Right. And we are who we are and we are ourselves. And I think that's very important. So to Christina's point, do not doubt who you are as a person, as an individual, but seek to have that slight discomfort, like push that discomfort, right, a little more and feel like you're having it. Like, because if you're not feeling that imposter syndrome, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. So embrace it. I mean, it's like embrace who you are and embrace that discomfort, right? That comes from doing something that you're probably not 100% sure that you know how to do, because that's how you learn. No one ever does anything that they do for the first time. They never do it right. So that's it. That's what learning is about. So again, what I'll say to Karina is embrace it, seek it, right? And learn to live with it, because that's how you push, that's how you open boundaries. And kind of going back to where we started, and that's how we open boundaries for everybody else that's just right after us.
That's
Very
amazing. Well said, Enrique. Very well said.
Enrique, but yeah, absolutely. A lot of passion in Enrique's voice. That's what I love. That's what I love. So let me ask you maybe the last question, because we have a few minutes. You all have built an amazing career, and all of you are recognized leaders in your companies and in the industry. How would you describe your personal impact in your business?
I'll start. It's easy for me. Like I said, the fact that I have worked with so many students, globally now, in so many conferences, so many panels, just connecting with students. I have people that reach out to me. I actually will respond to people on LinkedIn all the time. I still do. Because it's so meaningful for me. And, I do like 1 hour, I do an office hour once a week where I will talk to you. So hopefully, we'll make some friends out of this panel, but just serving as a role model. And I continue to do that. I didn't mention that not only am I the youngest of 6 girls, I have 3 girls. So this is super personal and I'm passionate about. And I will say, I have 2 in college and currently they are pursuing STEM. So I guess they got sick of hearing me talk about it. So, but anyway, yeah, this, just serving as a role model and getting more women and underrepresented minorities into STEM for me is huge, and the biggest impact I feel I can have.
Thank you, Karina. Who wants to go next?
I think that, elevating. I'm sorry, go ahead, Enrique.
No, please go, Christina. Please, you go. You go ahead, please.
So I would say that, the impact is to amplify, right? We're not going to shy away. We're not going to be a wallflower. We're loud and proud, and we bring results to the bottom line. There is a commercial value, and we bring competitive advantage. And you ought to see us and listen to us and hire us and promote us. And I think that is what we do. We build community and we elevate each other. And again, on a local level, international level, in all these spheres in our lives, I think that is my mission. That's my passion. And I know that I have people in my corner that will keep me honest to the mission of amplifying, connecting, and building for this community.
Thank you, Christina. Let's take one more.
I'll say only time will tell, but I hope that at that point is more people that look like me, sound like me, right, and are my peers. And that's what I hope the impact in the business will be.
Thank you, Enrique.
Yeah, maybe I can close it out by saying, I agree, right? It's results as well, and no one can argue with results. And so I always say impact is also about showing up and delivering.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, look, this has been a blast for me, being a moderator of this conversation, but we are unfortunately at the end of our panel discussion. On behalf of the High Tech Familia and our sponsor, Google, we want to thank you, Christina, Enrique, Karina, Monica, for sharing your inspiring stories. Stories that shows the importance of leading with purpose in both business and life. I also want to thank you, the audience, for their questions and engagement. Great questions, by the way. And finally, thank you for spending the past 3 days with us. Thank you all. To the future.
Gracias.
Guys.
Obrigado.
Gracias.